I've always been a night owl. I often take the last subway home and enjoy the solitude and rhythmic clacking of the tracks. But what happened last night doesn't make me confident that I'll ever take the subway again. It was a typical Thursday night. I stayed late at the office, working on a project that has been haunting me for weeks. When I left, the streets were almost empty, and the strange silence enveloped the city. I quickly ran to the station and rode a lone escalator to the underground. It's not unusual for the last ride of the day to be sparsely populated, especially when it's a typical weekday and most of the city's residents are in their homes by this point. The escalator ride is always the lengthy one, but luckily, my headphones provided the entertainment I needed. A favorite playlist and solitude. What could be better? This particular station is one of the newer ones in town and looks pretty modern. During the day, the platform is packed with people waiting for their connection, but at this late moment, I'm alone. It always feels strange to be alone in such a public place, but this was so different. The lights were classically on, and the escalators were running, and the wind could be heard from the tunnel hurtling the arrival of the train. The train arrived at its usual speed. The doors opened with a rush, and I stepped in to the old, familiar empty carriage. I settled into a seat and was glad to be alone for a while. When the train started moving, I leaned my head against the window and watched the small lights pass by the tunnel. It was soothing, almost hypnotic. I must have fallen asleep for a while, lulled by the gentle rocking of the train. When I woke up, the train was still moving, but something was off. I looked at the digital display above the door. Next station, blank. There was nothing else. It always shows the next station and then the final stop of the line, but not this time. The clock showed that it was 1:45 a.m. I should have been at my destination 10 minutes ago. I sat down and tried to shake off this drowsiness. The train continued to move through the tunnel, but there was no sign of the other station. This time, even the simple, faint lights that usually illuminated the tunnel were nowhere to be seen, leaving the scene outside shrouded in an impenetrable darkness. Even the carriages in front and behind me were empty, and no one was in them. It was as if I was alone on this whole train. But at that moment, an excellent thought occurred to me. Someone must be driving the metro, I muttered quietly to myself. I walked to the front of my carriage and pressed the button to speak to the conductor. But no one answered. Just static electricity. I tried calling for help on my phone, but there was no signal. In the last few years, the city has started to bring phone signals underground, but occasionally, it would drop out between certain stations that were just deeper. Apparently, one of those times was now. Panic began to take a hold of me. I walked through the car to the door at the end of it, hoping it would be unlocked. I lightly pressed the handle. The door opened with ease, and I could step through the next car. But it was too empty. Every carriage I checked was abandoned, from the first to the last 7 cars in total. The usual soothing hum of the train was oppressive, the shadows deeper and darker. I returned to my seat, and my mind raced with thoughts. The inside of the train, once familiar and comforting, now felt claustrophobic and alien. The flickering lights cast a strange, incongruous shadow that seemed to stretch and twist as I moved. My pulse quickened, and my breath became labored. The realization that I was all alone on this endless journey hit me full force. Minutes or maybe even hours have passed. However, looking at my watch, it showed 1:45 a.m. again. Time seemed to be losing meaning in this tunnel. I tried to occupy my mind counting the seats and reading the safety instructions over and over again, studying the map of the entire subway system, or trying to catch a phone signal. But the monotony of this train and the unchanging environment drove me crazy. I tried to explain rationally what was happening. Maybe there was a technical problem and the conductor had to go around several stations. But that didn't make any sense, as we hadn't passed a single other station yet. Why was there no announcement? Why is time seemingly not running out? Questions swirled around in my head, each more disturbing than the last. I decided to search the train again, this time more slowly, more thoroughly. I checked every seat, every nook and cranny, looking for any sign of life. There was nothing. No bags, no discarded newspapers, nothing to indicate that there was anyone else on this train. Ironically, this was the cleanest subway I have ever been on. Desperation made me try the emergency brake. I pulled it, expecting the train to stop. But nothing happened. It was as if this entire system had been disabled, and I had no way to stop the relentless movement of this rig. Exhaustion, hunger, and thirst began to set in. I slumped back in my seat, my body shaking with the mixture of fear and fatigue. I stared out the window, hoping for some hint of a station, some break in this monotony of this tunnel. But there was nothing, just an endless dark void. My thoughts began to get stranger and stranger, and my mind replayed all the decisions that had led me to this moment. I thought about my family, my friends, the life I took for granted. Regret washed over me, an overwhelming weight that seemed to suffocate me. As the hours dragged on, I began to question my sanity. Was this just a fatigue of my vivid imagination? Was I trapped in this nightmare? After all, I had fallen asleep for a while during this ride and could only dream. The silence was deafening, punctuated only by the rhythmic clacking of the tracks, a sound that had once soothed me, but now seemed like the relentless drumbeat of doom. In that moment of epiphany, I remembered my phone again. Maybe, just maybe, I could find a way to get a signal. I moved to the middle of the rig, held my phone high, and hoped again that I could pick up a signal, even for a little bit. Nothing. I tried again and again, moving back and forth, but it was futile. The signal was as elusive as the end of this tunnel. My throat was dry, my stomach clenched with emptiness. I dug through my bag and found a half-eaten granola bar and a small bottle of water. It wasn't much, but it was better than nothing. As I sat there munching on the bar, I couldn't shake this feeling that the train was a living being, a mechanical animal that had trapped me in its belly. The notion was absurd, but in my exhausted state, it seemed frighteningly real. More time passed, but my watch still read 1:45 a.m. I couldn't sleep as anxiety coursed through my veins. I could feel my grip on reality slipping away, my thoughts becoming more frightening and irrational. I needed the focus. I needed to find a way out. I returned to the front of the train and banged on the door of the conductor's cabin. "Hello? Anyone there? Please help me!" My voice echoed through the emptiness of the carriages, but no one answered. I collapsed against the door, tears of despair streaming down my face. I returned to my seat and felt the weight of despair bearing down on me, but just as I was about to give in to the rush of anxiety, the train began to slow down. My heart leapt with hope. Is it possible? Could I finally have reached a station? The train began to slow slightly. I pressed my face against the window, trying to see out just a little. The tunnel was still dark, but a faint glow appeared in the distance. The train gradually came to a stop, and then stopped. "End of station, please disembark," came over the speakers. The door opened with a mundane clang, and I stepped out onto the platform, all shaken up. The station was eerily quiet, as deserted as the train. I was still alone. I wasn't waiting for anything. Despite all my fatigue and exhaustion, I didn't hesitate and immediately began to run up the escalator towards the outside. 1, 2, 3. At first, I took them one at a time, then 2 at a time, and finally found myself running up the escalator 3 steps at a time. My heart was pounding with exhaustion, but also with anticipation. With each step, I felt the oppressive weight of the underground disappear and the promise of freedom grow stronger. The end of the escalator loomed at the horizon, and I forced myself to exert even more strength, even though my legs burned with exertion. Finally, I reached the top. I stumbled out of the top of the station and onto the street, gasping for breath. The cool night air hit me in the face, refreshing and invigorating. I took a moment to calm down and look around the usual yet somehow alien cityscape. The streets were quiet, with only a few cars passing by and the occasional pedestrian here and there. I set off on my way home, my legs still shaking with exertion, and the events of the previous night swirling in my head. My watch read 1:55 a.m. When I finally arrived at my apartment, I fumbled for my keys, my hand shaking. I staggered inside and collapsed on the couch, too exhausted to get into bed. In the following days, I avoided the subway altogether, preferring to take the bus, trams, taxis, or rely on my own legs. My friends and colleagues at work noticed that I somehow changed, but couldn't explain it to them. How do I? It sounded crazy even to me. For that reason, I'm writing this here as a little confession of my personal relief. I don't expect anyone to believe me, but at the very least, this experience can serve as a little warning. Thanks for watching. I really hope you enjoyed it. I'm gonna go ahead and apologize and say that I honestly thought that yesterday was Monday. And yeah, it was Tuesday and I missed my upload. So I apologize for that. And yeah, so here's this. But if you did like the story and you would like to hear more from this author specifically, make sure to like, comment, and if you're new to this channel and would like to hear more, make sure to subscribe. We've got a lot of content, a lot more coming, so just know that. Make sure to check out the links in the description as well, like Twitter, Instagram, everything's there, including my Gmail. If you want to submit a story or see what the updates are for when stories are coming out, I make sure to post them on my stories and stuff like that, on my social media and stuff. But with that being said, stay safe, stay scary, and I'll see you in the next one.